So there's a trick that carpenters have been using as long as they have been twisting screws into wood, and it is this: you lubricate it with soap. Soap's not messy, soap smells good, and it will help that screw run right in, whether it's going into Douglas fir or white oak. I'm going to show you half a dozen or maybe 8 or 10 useful tricks and tips and things that will get you out of a jam when you're trying to screw things together and you break something or you've got a problem. Anyway, there's some tricks. I'm going to show you a few of those, but before we do that, the first low-hanging fruit is, which one of these, dial soap, finishing wax, Croil, or just a light oil, is a pretty good lubricant when you're trying to run a screw into a piece of wood, whether it's a soft wood or a hard one. Bar of soap's a little dry. Now, sometimes you don't have to do that if it's been recently in the shower and used, and that's not going to make much difference. But what we're trying to do is get the soap to stick to the nail just a little. Now we're going to put just a little bit of paste wax on a couple of screws. Slippery. And last one, we're going to spray a little bit of Croil on another one of these screws. All right, so this is solid white oak. This is Croil, this is paste wax, this is dial, and this is just drywall screws. Let's see how they do. We'll start down here with the Croil. Oop, broke right at the end when I tried to run the head in. I'll stop a little sooner because it went in pretty good. Nope. Boy, that paste wax worked. Soap. That broke. Went in though. So that was pretty inconclusive. I think that the place that it would make the biggest difference is if you were trying to do this by hand, right? Or with a Yankee screwdriver, because in the age of 20-volt impact drivers, this is loaned to me by a friend, by the way, couldn't find my Makita. But in the age of these things, probably soap on a screw is not as big a deal. But if you got to run it in by hand, or if it's fussy and you can't get this thing in, or you left it at home, I think I would go with soap every time. All right, so all the theoretical testing aside, this is where the rubber meets the road with installing screws that you don't want to mar, not wanting to strip, and not wanting to make a mess. So we're going to pull this out of that piece of oak and demonstrate where it is that soap really comes in handy. Now, even though that hole has already got threads in it, it's still, I'm just demonstrating, you can just, when you're putting door hardware in, just give that screw just a little help. Just a little help from its friends, and put it in there. And that, my friends, is easier. Boom, and nobody cares about that. Now, another problem that perhaps is more frustrating is when one of the screws strips out. So this screw right here is stripped. You see that? That's the same screw, but it's just, let's say it's 100 years old and the door's been replaced and knocked off its hinges so many times that the screw is just not holding anything. So what you do with that is, the hole is no good, so you make it better. You take a little piece of material. This is a piece of cedar, which is pretty soft, right? A lot softer than the oak. You could do it with oak if you wanted. You split off something to drive in there. That's a little more than we need. Leatherman keeps you on the road. I'm going to take that down just about like that. That's going to drive right in, so I'm going to give it a little wood glue treatment. So the end of that is going to cause a little bit of a problem around the head of the screw. So I'm going to get in there with the tip of my Leatherman and just get rid of some of that material that's out here against the hinge itself. See that? So the cedar is still in there. The hole is now essentially filled back up. Now you don't push too hard, you let the screw get a hold of everything it can get a hold of. And then once it starts in, you just let it pull itself in. And when I have to take this hinge off next time, that'll be the screw that complains the hardest. You remember how those drywall screws snapped off if I tried to pull them down into the wood? You prevent that with a bit like that. It's tapered to mimic the taper of the screw, and it's got cutters at the top to countersink the head itself, like this. And that is ready to receive the screw. That cutter was set a little too deep, but you get the idea. You can adjust that to where it's perfect and it goes away. Fortunately, Torx has made something even better than that for installing hardware jams. It's a trim head screw. And when I say trim head, I mean trim head. Watch this. No pre-drilling necessary. Get it started and go ahead.
One more little twitch.
Flush, innocuous, done. So let's say that the screw hole is completely blown out. I mean, like the way that happens sometimes in a 100-year-old house, and you just need to create a whole new hole. You drill out a nice round hole and press in a dowel, and then create another screw hole, like this. Got two, just in case one of them's not right. So I'm going to put a little tight bond on there. Trying not to scratch the paint too much. Now if you're gutsy, you can eyeball the center on there, or you can get a hinge bit. We showed you these before. It's got that little centering sleeve that pushes back. So that will center in the screw hole. Doesn't matter where the dowel is. Like that, and just like that, it is as good as brand new. Boom. So let's say it's exposed hardware and it's expensive hardware and it comes and the screws are the wrong color, or worse, as is always the case, almost always the case, the screws that come with the hardware are junk and they're going to be breaking off, so you need to color some screw heads. Now in the majority of cases, probably they're going to need to be black. That's usually close enough that it'll pass for oil rub bronze, at least on a galloping horse. Or maybe the opposite thing is the case, and it needs to be white, but your can just plugged up. You get my point? Or maybe it's in your machine shed and it needs to be tractor yellow. You get the point. Cardboard box, you run the screws in by hand, you plan ahead. You put your batteries on the charger to charge when you go home that night, and you spray these before you leave so that in the morning they're dry and they're not just going to go to pieces when you run them in. So heaven forbid, you've got to get into a spot, a stair railing or something, and you just can't get a drill in there. And you can't do it by hand. You can get these 90-degree adapters. This one's Craig. It was $29 or something. Milwaukee's is awesome. There's lots of them. I think we've got a DeWalt here. But you see that? It just turns it and it rolls over and it frustrates the daylights out of you because you're not in line with the drill motor. Let's try this. Push a little harder with your left hand, Wadsworth. Yes, now we're started. That's the key, pushing with that left hand. So, maybe you got to put an electrical clamp in there or something. Nothing else is going to get in there. There are a couple other really cool accessories that you're probably going to want to have. Now, my friends, you can go anywhere. Let's put one in here and find something impossible. So there's almost no limit to the accessories that you can stack up. You need to drill back over the top of your head, I don't know, or you're up under a kitchen sink. or you're over the top of a railing and back against a piece of stair hardware. I mean, man, that's a driveline deluxe, right? And then between that and the vast assortment of screws that GRK has, and others, but the reason nobody can nail anymore, the reason that the young construction guys can't swing a hammer is because they don't have to. Realistically, nail guns and impact drivers have made better connections, faster, less expensive, if your time is worth anything, than they ever were in the past. And I, for one, am thankful. Thanks for watching Essential Craftsman, and keep up the good work.